So if you want to make $1 million over your lifetime, I mean, the absolute worst thing you can possibly do is treat your money like a math problem.
Ooh, which completely breaks the brains of most logical people, right?
Yeah.
Because we're basically conditioned from childhood to believe that finance is this hard science.
Yeah, totally.
You think if you just memorize the right formulas, plug your income into a pristine little spreadsheet, calculate your compound interest, and pick the perfect low-cost index fund, well, wealth will just mechanically dispense out the other side.
Like a vending machine, like you literally put the math in and the money comes out.
Exactly.
But I mean, imagine we've just opened up this massive, chaotic, worn-out notebook that we've been compiling together for you. This is pure amateurology, basically.
A giant synthesis of fields that are absolutely not supposed to touch.
Right. You open this notebook we have on the table here, and there isn't a single math equation. Instead, you're looking at FBI hostage negotiation manuals, ancient Babylonian clay tablets, deep psychological studies on the human ego, and some behavioral economics from South Korea.
And the reason we do that is because the very moment you introduce a human being to a spreadsheet, the math completely falls apart.
It just shatters.
Yeah, because money isn't a study of numbers. It's a deeply emotional, highly irrational study of human behavior.
Yeah.
It's messy. It's biological.
So since you're sitting right here at the table with us today, our mission is to take all these seemingly completely unrelated threads from this giant notebook and weave them together.
Right, to answer one single massive question.
Exactly. And that question is, what specific skill provides the absolute greatest financial return over a lifetime?
And, we can tell you right up front what it isn't. I mean, it's not learning to code in Python.
Nope.
It's not day trading tech stocks based on whatever Reddit thread is topping off. And it is definitely not grinding out 80-hour work weeks at a corporate job until your hair falls out.
The ultimate financial skill, the one that actually moves the needle in reality, is this bizarre hybrid. It's like part internal ego management, part external empathy, and this radical fundamental rethinking of how you actually value your time.
So we're going to stitch all these diverse sources into one cohesive playbook for your actual financial and personal freedom. And to do that, I mean, we really have to start with the invisible foundation, which is playing defense.
Right out of the gate. Because to generate a massive return over a lifetime, you have to actually survive the game first. You have to keep the money you make.
Yeah, Morgan Housel, in his book, The Psychology of Money, he lays down this concept that completely shatters our cultural programming. He writes, quote, "Wealth is what you don't see."
Which feels entirely wrong. I mean, we are biologically wired to assess status visually, right?
Oh, it's
Like, if you go back thousands of years, humans displayed status with rare pelts or elaborate feathers. Today, if I'm walking down the street and a guy pulls up to a stoplight in a roaring brand new $100,000 Porsche, my brain reflexively fires off a signal. It says, that guy is wealthy.
But look at the actual mathematical reality of that moment. The only factual data point you have about that driver's finances is that he has $100,000 less than he did before he bought the car.
Or, which is far more likely in today's economy, he is $100,000 in debt.
Right, paying a brutal interest rate. The Porsche isn't wealth. The Porsche is just a localized transfer of wealth from him to the car dealership. True wealth is the unspent income.
It's the invisible gap between your ego and your income.
Exactly.
It's the money that hasn't been converted into visible stuff just to impress strangers at a stoplight. Because true wealth is hidden options. It's the flexibility to walk away from a toxic boss.
Or the ability to take a lower paying job that you actually love.
Yeah.
Or to weather a medical emergency without having a total panic attack.
And Thomas Stanley captured this perfectly in The Millionaire Next Door. He has this brilliant analogy about physical fitness.
Oh, the jogging one, right.
Yeah. So think about the people you see jogging through your neighborhood every single morning. If you just look at them, most of them look like they absolutely do not need to jog.
Because they're already lean, they're in incredible shape.
Right. You almost want to roll down your window and yell, you can stop, you won.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that is fundamentally misunderstanding causality. They look like they don't need to jog because they jog every day. They maintain the fitness.
Stanley argues that the wealthy work at staying financially fit in the exact same way, by playing defense.
They budget. They live below their means. They scrutinize their expenses. And the people who aren't financially fit often believe that once they hit a certain income threshold, they can just stop running.
They think the high salary is the actual finish line.
Which is a huge trap. We see this all the time with doctors or lawyers who make $500,000 a year, but are secretly living paycheck to paycheck.
because their lifestyle has completely consumed their income, which, ties perfectly into another psychological trap Housel mentions, drawing on weight loss studies.
Ah, right, the treadmill trap. I love this one.
It's so good. So in these studies, people consistently overestimate the number of calories they burn during a workout by a factor of 4.
A factor of 4.
I know. They hit the treadmill, sweat for 30 minutes, and think they just burned 1,000 calories. Then, because their brain tells them they've, quote, earned it, they go eat a massive burger and actually consume twice as many calories as they burned.
It's a total behavioral illusion.
And we run that exact same illusion with our paychecks. You get a 5% raise at work, and your ego instantly inflates. You overestimate the safety that new money provides.
So you finance a new car, you upgrade your apartment, you start buying the expensive wine. The ego literally eats the wealth before it even has a chance to exist.
You're running on the financial treadmill, but your spending outpaces your earning.
Which is exactly why Housel proposes something that sounds almost like financial heresy. He argues that you do not need a specific reason to save money.
Which is crazy because every financial advisor on the planet disagrees with that. The standard advice is that every single dollar needs a job.
Right, you need a bucket for the down payment on the house, a bucket for the kids' college fund, a bucket for the vacation.
And bucket saving makes total logical sense if we live in a perfectly predictable universe. If you know with 100% certainty what your life will look like in 10 years, sure, assign a precise dollar amount to it.
But the fundamental reality of the human condition is absolute unpredictability. I mean, global pandemics shut down the economy overnight. Industries get wiped out by AI.
You wake up at age 42 and realize you despise the career you've been building for 20 years.
Exactly. The world isn't a spreadsheet. So Housel says that saving for a specific goal is fine, but saving just for the sake of saving into a giant, unlabeled void is how you buy a hedge against life's inevitable surprises.
You are buying a shock absorber for your life. You don't know where the pothole is or how deep it's going to be, but you know for a fact the road isn't going to be smooth.
I love that. And if we flip back to the ancient history section of our Amateurology notebook, to George Clayson's The Richest Man in Babylon, we see this isn't some modern anxiety.
Oh yeah, we're talking ancient Mesopotamia here.
Clay tablets, camel traders, bronze coins. But the human operating system hasn't changed a bit. The very first law of gold in that book is that a person must put away at least 1/10 of all their earnings to create an estate for their future.
Today, we just call it paying yourself first. But Clayson frames it so viscerally. He says when you spend all your money on clothes, food, and luxuries, you are paying the weaver, the baker, and the shoemaker.
You're paying everyone in the city except yourself.
You are treating yourself like a slave who works only to enrich others. Saving that 10th is the mechanism for paying your future self before you feed your current ego.
But hold on, though. I feel like I have to challenge this a bit.
Yeah.
Because if we follow Housel's rule to the letter, and we're just blindly hoarding cash into this unlabeled void for the great unknown, aren't we just going to end up as miserable misers?
Yeah, like are we supposed to just sit on a pile of money in a freezing house, wearing rags, completely terrified of the world until we die? Where is the actual life in that?
Well, that is the ultimate trap of extreme frugality, and it happens when people confuse survival with deprivation. Housel isn't advocating for you to live a miserable, joyless existence.
Right.
He is advocating for survival so that you can tap into the most powerful force in the universe, which is compound interest.
The snowball effect.
Exactly. But compound interest requires time. Decades of uninterrupted time. If you blow up your finances because you tried to show off or because you panicked during a recession and sold everything, you interrupt the compounding.
You break the chain.
You break the chain.
Yeah.
Housel illustrates this beautifully with the contrasting lives of Ronald Reed and Richard Fusco.
Oh, this story is incredible. So Ronald Reed was a janitor and a gas station attendant in rural Vermont. He wore flannel shirts held together with safety pins. He chopped his own firewood.
Super frugal guy.
Very. But every day, he would go to the local library and read the Wall Street Journal. And with whatever tiny amount of money he saved by living modestly, he quietly bought shares of boring blue chip dividend stocks, J.M. Smucker, CVS, Procter & Gamble.
And then what happened?
Well, when he died at age 92, the world discovered this quiet janitor had amassed an estate of over $8 million.
Which is wild. He was an entirely ordinary man with extraordinary behavioral control. He survived. He stayed in the game long enough for time to do the heavy lifting.
But then you contrast him with Richard Fusco.
Right. Fusco was a Harvard-educated MBA. a wildly successful elite executive at Merrill Lynch. He was so successful in his 40s that he retired to become a philanthropist.
He had every financial resource, every piece of literacy, every advantage you could possibly have.
But his ego was completely insatiable. He borrowed heavily to expand an incredibly lavish lifestyle, which included an 18,000-square-foot mansion in Connecticut with 2 pools, 7 garages, and an elevator.
He was highly, highly leveraged.
And when the 2008 financial crisis hit, the music stopped. He was hit with margin calls, lost control of his debt, and eventually had to file for personal bankruptcy. His mansion was sold in foreclosure for a fraction of its cost.
So look at the stark contrast there. The financial genius who possesses massive intellectual capability but loses control of his ego faces absolute catastrophic disaster.
Meanwhile, the janitor who possesses 0 formal financial education but perfectly manages his behavior and expectations achieves massive generational wealth.
That is why defense is step 1. Survival is the prerequisite for everything else.
Okay, so ego management ensures we don't get wiped out. We build the shock absorber. But obviously, the more money you make, the faster that shock absorber grows. We have to transition from playing defense to playing offense.
We need to increase the inflow. But when we look at our sources, the highest return on investment doesn't come from going back to school for another degree or grinding out 80-hour weeks.
No, the real leverage comes from how you negotiate with the world. It comes from mastering human interaction.
We are moving from the internal psychology of managing ourselves to the external psychology of empathy. And to understand this, we pulled from an unlikely source for a finance discussion.
The FBI.
Yeah. Chris Voss is a former lead international kidnapping negotiator for the FBI, and his book, Never Split the Difference, completely dismantles everything they teach you in a traditional MBA program.
Because if you go to business school, they teach you that negotiation is a rational mathematical dance, right? You make a spreadsheet, you calculate your exact walkaway number, your BT&A.
Right. You go in, you state your logical case, you find the middle ground, and you compromise.
And Voss points out that the FBI tried that highly logical approach in the 1970s and 1980s, and people died. Because humans in high-stress situations, whether it's a bank robber surrounded by SWAT teams or an employee terrified of asking for a raise, they are not rational.
You are dealing with the amygdala. The primitive emotional center of the brain has completely hijacked the logic center. You cannot spreadsheet your way out of an amygdala hijack.
Voss says you have to use tactical empathy. And we needed to define this because people hear the word empathy and they think it means sympathy. They think it means being a soft pushover or agreeing with the other person or feeling sorry for them.
Tactical empathy is none of those things. Voss defines it as the deliberate ability to recognize the perspective of your counterpart and actively vocalize that recognition.
It is a psychological martial art.
Yeah.
You are consciously entering their worldview to disarm their defensive mechanisms.
And think about how this applies beyond hostage situations. I mean, you are negotiating every single day. You are negotiating a starting salary, a vendor contract, the price of a used car, or even negotiating with your toddler about putting on their shoes.
And here is the fascinating crossover in our notebook. We have Chris Voss, the grizzled FBI hostage negotiator.
Yeah.
And then we have Ramit Sethi, a personal finance expert who wrote, I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
They operate in completely different universes.
Totally different. But they both advocate for a singular tactic that is shockingly simple, yet financially explosive. They both insist on the biological power of a smile.
Literally, just smiling. Ramit Sethi tells this story about applying for all these high-stakes college scholarships. He had the grades, he had the resume, but he kept getting rejected in the interview room.
Because he was acting stiff, defensive, and incredibly serious.
Right. But the moment he consciously decided to relax and just smile during the interviews, the dynamic instantly changed. He started winning tens of thousands of dollars.
And he absolutely insists that before any negotiation, you have to practice your exact words out loud with a friend, which is the one piece of advice almost everyone refuses to take.
Oh, they hate it. People say, I'm not role-playing, that's weird and awkward. But you know what's really weird? Stuttering through a salary negotiation, losing your train of thought, and leaving $15,000 on the table for the next 3 years because you were too embarrassed to practice in your living room.
And Chris Voss gives us the actual neurology behind why Sethi's smile works. Voss calls it involuntary neurological telepathy. We have mirror neurons in our brains.
When we see someone radiating warmth, when we see a genuine smile, our brain involuntarily triggers a reflex.
The vagus nerve is stimulated. It literally lowers the heart rate of the person looking at you.
So imagine you are sitting across from your boss, the fluorescent lights are humming, you are both stressed, your boss expects a fight about money. If you walk in radiating tension, your boss's mirror neurons will reflect that tension.
They will lock down into a defensive fight-or-flight mentality. But if you walk in, make eye contact, and speak with a genuine smile in your voice, you hack their biology. You shift their brain into a collaborative, problem-solving state.
The Ivy League teaches game theory, but the FBI teaches empathy. Voss says that the best negotiators effectively duplicate the role of a psychotherapist. You use emotion as a tool to uncover the structural problem.
You use a technique called labeling. If your boss is being incredibly rigid about giving you a raise, you don't attack their stinginess with logic, you identify the underlying fear.
You say something like, it seems like you're under a massive amount of pressure from the board to keep departmental costs down this quarter. You don't judge it, you just label it. And suddenly, the boss feels seen, the tension drops.
But wait, let me jump in here. Because when you describe it like this, practicing a script with friends, going into an office, intentionally faking a smile to stimulate a manager's vagus nerve, and labeling their fears, it sounds highly manipulative.
Yeah, it sounds like a Jedi mind trick to extract money from people. Aren't we just bending reality?
That is the most common pushback Voss gets. People feel like it's a dirty trick. But Voss completely rejects that framing. It is not manipulative cheating. It is simply acknowledging reality.
We desperately want to pretend that humans are hyper-rational calculating machines. But we aren't.
We are emotional, irrational creatures who operate in predictable biological patterns. Utilizing that knowledge isn't cheating. Ignoring it is just bad strategy.
You are just working with the human operating system instead of fighting against it.
Exactly. Take a specific phrase Ramit Sethi uses for salary negotiations. The boss gives you a number that is lower than you want. Instead of getting offended or defensive, Sethi suggests you smile and say, "We're pretty close. Now let's see how we can make this work."
I love that phrase so much.
It's brilliant. By smiling and using the word "we," you are employing tactical empathy. You validate their initial offer, you lower the emotional temperature, and you invite them to sit on the same side of the table as you to solve a mutual puzzle.
That single sentence, delivered with emotional intelligence, can translate directly into a $5,000 bump in a starting salary.
And think about the math of that. A $5,000 raise isn't a one-time bonus. It resets your baseline. Every future raise, every future bonus, every future job hop is calculated off that new, higher baseline.
Over a 30-year career, that one 10-second interaction, fueled by tactical empathy, compounds into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Empathy is the highest ROI soft skill on the planet.
All right, let's look at the engine we're building here.
Okay.
Tactical empathy increases the inflow. You're negotiating better, earning more. And ego management, the defense we talked about first, ensures you keep that money rather than spending it on a Porsche.
But if you just stuff all those retained earnings under a mattress, inflation is going to slowly eat it alive. It's like leaving an ice cube on the counter. It just melts.
To generate a lifetime return, the money has to go to work.
Right.
We have to cross the bridge from what academics call financial literacy into actual financial capability.
This distinction is crucial. Literacy is passive. It is the ability to define words. You can pass a multiple choice test. You know what a mutual fund is. You can define compound interest. You know what an APR is on a credit card.
But massive amounts of highly literate people still make horrific real-world financial decisions. They understand what interest is, but they still carry credit card debt.
Literacy is knowing how to read sheet music. Capability is actually sitting down and playing the piano. Capability is the practical behavioral execution in the real world.
And to explore capability, we turn to a fascinating book from South Korea by Jong Seon-young titled Nak Belajarla Sol Wang, which translates to Child, Learn About Money.
It's framed as a father passing down hard-won financial wisdom to his child, deeply inspired by the mother's incredible financial capability. The foundational concept they emphasize is seed money.
Seed money is the critical mass. It's the initial lump sum of capital you have to painfully scrape together before you can actually start participating in the compounding game.
Think about building a dam across a rushing river. When you first start, you are wading into the freezing water, carrying heavy, muddy stones by hand, fighting the current, trying to get a foundation to stick.
It is exhausting, manual labor. That is building your seed money through frugality. It's hard.
Yeah.
But once that foundation is built, once the dam is in place, It catches the water.
It generates hydroelectric power while you sleep. Gravity and flow do the work for you.
But John emphasizes that in our modern era of financial capitalism, you have to possess the capability to know exactly where to place that dam. The mother in the book utilized real estate as her primary vehicle because she intimately understood property values and leverage.
But Zhang strongly pushes the child to develop the capability to read financial statements and deeply understand the stock market.
Which is the exact point where 90% of people completely tune out. The moment you say corporate balance sheet or cash flow statement, people are terrified.
Because it looks like an alien language. It's just grids of numbers and jargon.
It looks intimidating because they lack capability. But Jung demystifies this. Financial statements are not complex calculus. They are simply a story. They're designed to show the absolute reality of a company.
Money comes in, money goes out. A cash flow statement is just the pulse of the business.
By studying them, you are not staring at a casino screen gambling on random three-letter tickers. You are learning to read the actual flow of capitalism.
You are watching how human needs translate into industry growth, how capital moves around the globe. It elevates you from a blind gambler to an informed participant.
And capability isn't exclusively about Wall Street or real estate. Vicki Robin, in her seminal book, Your Money or Your Life, talks about a different kind of capability. Financial intelligence as a DIY hedge against inflation.
We are always told that to beat inflation, we have to chase higher yields in the stock market. But Vicki Robin argues you can dramatically beat inflation by lowering your personal denominator through practical life skills.
Insourcing. You develop the capability to fix the leaky seal on your washing machine instead of paying a plumber $300 just to show up.
You learn to clip your cat's claws instead of paying the vet. You maintain your car. You learn to cook complex meals instead of relying on delivery apps.
Every single time you use your own capability to solve a problem, you are drastically reducing the amount of capital you need to survive. You are lowering your personal inflation rate to 0 for those tasks.
Okay, we have Vicki Robin telling us to build practical life skills. We have Zhang telling us we need to deeply analyze financial statements and read the flow of capitalism so we can confidently place our seed money.
Right.
But hold on, if analyzing balance sheets is the key to investing, why does Morgan Housel say that the most powerful investing book ever written wouldn't be a textbook on valuation?
Oh, the one-page book idea.
Yeah, he says it should just be 1 page long with 4 words, shut up and wait. How do we reconcile Zhang's intense analytical capability with Housel telling us to basically do nothing?
It looks like a contradiction, but it's actually the perfect synergy of the two types of capability. Zhang is teaching you the analytical capability required to pick the right vehicle. You have to understand the business you are buying.
Because if you buy a stock blindly based on a tip, the very first time the market drops 20%, your conviction will completely evaporate.
Yeah.
You will panic, sell at the bottom, and lose your seed money.
Exactly. But House is talking about behavioral capability. The multiplier is time. The magic is in the waiting. Changing strategies constantly, jumping in and out of the market because you saw a scary headline on the news, destroys compounding.
Housel proposes a massive psychological shift. He says that achieving historical market returns demands a price, and that price is not paid in dollars to a broker.
The price is paid in emotional agony. The price is enduring extreme volatility, fear, doubt, and the regret of watching your portfolio drop by half during a recession.
And most people view that drop as a fine, like a punishment.
Yes, exactly. When you get a speeding ticket, it's a fine. It's the universe punishing you for doing something wrong. And human nature dictates that if you get fined, you change your behavior so it doesn't happen again.
So people see their stocks drop, they feel like they are being fined for investing, and they sell everything to make the pain stop.
But Housel says it's not a fine. It's a fee. It is the price of admission. Think about going to Disneyland. You pay $150 at the gate. It hurts to hand over that money.
But you don't feel guilty. You don't feel like you did something wrong. You are willingly paying a fee to get access to the rides.
Housel says you must view market volatility as the fee you paid to ride the wealth-building machine of capitalism. True financial capability is having the psychological fortitude to stare at a 30% market crash and recognize it merely as the cost of admission.
Zhang gives you the capability to build the dam. Housel gives you the capability to sit there and let it catch water no matter how bad the storm gets.
Okay, this is phenomenal. Let's look at the master engine we've built. We are managing our ego, ignoring the Porsches, and saving our seed money.
We are using tactical empathy and smiles to hack the human operating system and increase our income.
And we've developed the analytical and behavioral capability to deploy that money Endure the fee of volatility and let it compound. We have generated a massive financial return. But, so what?
It's the most important question of all. What is the actual purpose of this massive engine? If we just build this mountain of money and we sit on it in our sweatpants, scrolling through our banking app at age 85, comparing high scores, we've utterly failed.
What is the point of the wealth if it just sits there? The final section of our notebook makes it incredibly clear. We must execute the ultimate currency conversion. We must convert this money into time and joy.
The academic journals are incredibly unified on this point. There was a major study covering incredibly diverse populations, everyone from working-class Americans struggling with shifts to multimillionaires in the Netherlands.
And the researchers were looking at what actually moves the needle on life satisfaction. Across every income bracket, the data consistently showed that using money to buy time-saving services provides a massive psychological buffer against what they term time famine.
Time famine, I feel that in my bones. It's that crushing modern anxiety where you feel like you are always behind. You work all day, you commute, and then you have to clean the house, mow the lawn, do the groceries. There is just zero margin in the day to actually live.
The researchers literally measured cortisol levels. The sheer pressure of not having enough hours is toxic. The study proved that when people use their money to buy their way out of tasks they despise, whether it's paying the neighbor's kid to mow the lawn, using a laundry service, or getting groceries delivered, it instantly reduces that time pressure.
Buying time literally equals measurable happiness. Morgan Housel summarizes this perfectly. He writes, "The ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want, pays the highest dividend that exists in finance."
But here is where we have to introduce a massive perspective shift that challenges a lot of modern finance culture. We read Bill Perkins' book, Die with Zero. And Perkins completely dismantles the traditional mindset of endless hoarding, and he specifically targets the FIRE movement.
Financial independence, retire early. The movement where people in their 20s live on rice and beans, share a studio apartment with 4 roommates, and save 80% of their income so they can theoretically retire at 40.
Right. Perkins argues that if you are just hoarding indefinitely, blindly deferring all your gratification to some mythical future date, you are actively wasting your life energy.
He introduces a concept called the memory dividend. We just talked about compound interest for money. Perkins argues that experiences compound in the exact same way.
It is a beautiful reframing. When you spend money on a truly great experience, you don't just consume that joy in the moment and it disappears. It's not a disposable cup.
You get the joy of the actual event, yes. But then you get the joy of remembering it a week later. You get the joy of telling the story at a dinner party 5 years later. You get the joy of looking at the photos with your spouse 20 years later.
It pays a continuous emotional dividend. And just like financial investing, the earlier in your life you invest in an experience, the longer it has to pay out that memory dividend.
And timing is everything. The value of an experience is not static. Perkins gives a perfect example about traveling to Europe. Imagine visiting the Spanish Steps in Rome.
If you go when you are 22 years old, you might be sleeping in a grimy $15 a night hostel. You're eating cheap pizza on a park bench.
But you have infinite energy. You walk 12 miles a day, you meet incredible people, you stay up until dawn. It is a profound, shape-shifting adventure that alters the trajectory of your life.
Now, delay that exact same trip. Wait until you are 38 and you bring a toddler. You have more money, so you stay in a nicer hotel. But the kid is having a meltdown because of the time change. You were exhausted. And the only thing the toddler will remember is eating a scoop of gelato.
The experience is entirely different.
And if you wait until you are 85, you finally have all the millions of dollars from your compound interest engine. You fly first class. You stay at the Ritz. But you might not physically have the cartilage in your knees to climb the Spanish Steps at all.
You have abundant money, but scarce health. The fundamental value of the experience degrades if the timing is wrong.
Which leads Perkins to introduce the personal interest rate. It's a way of valuing your time as it slips away. Basically, the older you get, the more someone should have to pay you to delay an experience.
When you are 20, delaying a backpacking trip by 1 year carries almost zero risk. You still have plenty of health and time.
When you are 75, delaying a major trip by 1 year carries a massive existential risk that you will literally die or lose your mobility before you can take it. Your personal interest rate is sky high. Your time is too valuable to defer.
And to ensure we are actually buying experiences that pay these dividends rather than just buying junk, Emma Edwards brings in a great practical tool called the joy ranking.
She suggests looking back at your last month of discretionary spending, all the non-essential stuff, and brutally ranking each expense on a scale of 1 to 10 based on the actual lasting joy it brought you.
It forces you to confront your own psychology. When you bought that $300 jacket online at 11:00 p.m. on a Tuesday, did it actually bring you lasting, value-driven joy?
Or was your boss screaming at you all week, you were exhausted, and you just bought a fleeting splash of dopamine to cope with the misery of your job?
Are you buying a memory dividend, or are you just buying a momentary distraction from a life you don't like? But hang on, we need to address a massive elephant in the room here. We have a glaring contradiction in our notebook.
Let's lay it out.
In the very first section, we celebrated Morgan Housel. He told us to save for literally no reason. Build a massive, unlabeled shock absorber to protect against the chaotic, unpredictable world. Hoard cash to survive.
Right.
But now we are championing Bill Perkins, who is practically screaming at us to spend our money on experiences before our knees give out, to literally die with zero in the bank account. How on earth do we reconcile these two entirely opposite worldviews? Do we save everything out of fear, or do we spend everything out of FOMO?
It is the ultimate tightrope walk of personal finance, and it's the synthesis of everything we've talked about. They are not actually enemies. They are two sequential phases of the exact same life cycle.
Okay, walk me through that.
Think of Housel's survival and margin of safety as the required concrete foundation of a house. You must build that baseline of savings first so that you do not operate your daily life out of terror.
You need the emergency fund, you need the seed money so that a medical bill, a sudden layoff, or a broken transmission doesn't completely destroy you. You have to buy your freed up hours on perfectly timed experiences that compound in your memory, as Perkins advocates.
Exactly. Housel keeps you from going bankrupt financially. Perkins keeps you from going bankrupt experientially. You absolutely need both to maximize the true, holistic return on a human life.
So let's bring all the chaotic threads of this massive amateurology notebook together into one cohesive answer. We started by asking what specific skill provides the greatest financial return over a lifetime? And the answer is not a math equation.
The ultimate skill is a mastery of emotional and temporal intelligence.
It is the discipline to manage your internal ego, avoiding the visual traps of wealth, so you can actually save the seed money and survive an unpredictable world.
It is the active, tactical empathy to negotiate with the humans around you, lowering their heart rates with a smile to increase your intrinsic value.
It is the practical capability to endure the emotional fee of market volatility and let capitalism compound your labor. And destroying your foundation just to feed your current ego.
Are you buying things you don't even really want with money you don't actually have, just to impress people you don't even like?
The next time you log into your banking app, I want you to try a radically different exercise. Don't look at the statement as a cold list of transactions and balances. Look at it as a high-definition mirror of your own psychology.
Look at exactly where your money flowed last month. Did that money buy you freedom? Did it buy you a lasting memory? Or did it just buy you an audience?
Because at the very end of the game, the greatest return on your money isn't the final high score in the account. It's the person you become while managing it.
It's the life you actually got to live.
The spreadsheet can't measure that. Wealth isn't a line on a chart, it's the invisible space between your ego and your time. Keep exploring that space.